Moving on.
Moving on to what? What should we talk about now? Some other rubbish faction. More Forge Fathers by the looks of it.
Yeah, it's like a transition from here. Magic
Heavily armored
here.
space dwarves to almost heavily armored space elves.
They're not elves. They've never been elves.
I only said that to irritate you, Ian.
I know.
So, Asterians. Claudio, who are the Asterians?
The Asterians, well, you already mentioned the space elves. The Asterians are more a slender and pointy-eared race. So in the human way, or in our tradition, you always say elves to them. But they are very secretive, and as you can see, they use robots to fight, mostly robots, to fight the wars. Even though they are a really diplomatic and culturally high evolved race, and they also have like trades and agreements with many other races across the galaxy, and they are also ancient and technologically really advanced, and in their point of view also philosophically advanced and better than anyone else, because they strive for the balance over everything else. And if that means that they have to go to war against the entire galaxy or some races to maintain the balance, so they will do that. And they will send these Ciphers, they're elite versions of fighting robots, so to say, or maybe marionettes, who are more of the mass-produced drones, and other machineries like artillery drones, and sometimes even like living Assyrians, like this overseer here, where you can see the pointy ears, overseeing the battle on the battleground, because those Ciphers are something really special. They are not an AI-driven robot doing some job, but they are individually operated from a nearby spacecraft by highly trained pilots who are connected to the machines, to each single one, via neurotransmission, which is because those robots have grown DNA parts from their pilots in them, so that this transmission is the most effective, so that the really trained and elite pilots can maintain their skills on the battlefield even while like piloting these drones, these Ciphers. The backdraw is, if these Ciphers die, there's a small chance that there is a neuro backlash, killing the operator on the ship. So it's not that you only mass produce your robots and send them to war, but there's always a chance that one of your very few and really highly trained, as I said, pilots can die. So it's a really interesting concept, and I think it really shows also in the rules how they work. They are really a unique faction, and they are one of the oldest, because, as we already said, with the Forge Fathers, that they are old, but they have many secrets. And the death arc, which we mentioned last time, with the plague, no one knows what's.
I think we know.
Was the plague something they knew about? Did they do it? But nevertheless, they want to contain it, and because that would threaten the balance of the galaxy, of course. So
they're just clearing up their own mistakes.
Maybe. The problem is you never know if they are your allies or your enemies, because one day you can be their ally because it's good for the balance. Then something happens, and you're a bad guy again.
I'm going to give you a quote now. Never trust an elf.
Yeah, we are with. That's why we don't call them elves.
Let's keep saying elf.
That's not true.
Elves.
That's not true. They look like.
Look at those ears. They're elves.
Oh, it's all about the ears, isn't it?
Even their robots have got ears. They don't even need ears.
They're really slender.
Pointy ears, so I must think elves.
Big pixies. Anyway, Asterians. I agree with you, Claudio. I really, really love the fluff of the Cipher sort of locked into his machine, sort of piloting sorry, not the Cipher, the Cipher being piloted by the Asterian up in the ship. I think that's a really sort of smart concept, and it gives me an immense amount of joy when I kill a Cipher, knowing that I might well have fried a Asterian somewhere a long way away. You know, he's sitting there and he's in his underpants all wired up, and he's just like, his brain's just gone, and he's just like, awesome. Beautiful moment.
I think it's the crazy part about it is that these machines aren't only machines, but they have like some few percentage of biological DNA grown in them. And there are even reports that some of them, which are used extensively, gain some kind of self-awareness and move while the pilot isn't connected to them in the ship, because they are used so many times, so that like this biological part some kind of grows and they have to be put down, and that's really really creepy, I think, and it shows what kind of technology is used there. It's not like the brutish or heat focused technology that the Forge Fathers use, but some kind of really really weird, you don't really want to know what's happening there style of technology.
Should have a faction of feral Ciphers. Those have gone native.
The AI's got out of control and they've just started controlling themselves.
That would be awesome.
So there is. So I think the Asterians are a really interesting race, aren't they? You know, and they are quite robotic. They're not all robots, of course, but a lot of their stuff has key elements of being robots in that, particularly construct. Large numbers of their units are constructs, which means that they can't be pinned, and that's actually a really big advantage. Your pinning is a big aspect of Deadzone, which gives you huge advantages in combat and obviously stops people shooting, or at least stops them being as effectively shooting or moving, depending on the weapon they've got. It doesn't stop them being moved. So if someone throws a frag grenade into there or something like that, they can still move the unit, but it won't be pinned. So it could still be pushed off a building or something like that. But yeah, the ability to sort of withstand one of the key attack elements of some factions is huge, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think the more experienced of a player you are, the better construct gets, because I think if you start out, you only use suppressive weapons who have the keyword to suppress enemies, and then later, if you get a few nuances of tactics and more objective play, maybe you see the rapid fire rule, which lets you suppress or blaze away at an enemy, can be much stronger than shooting with a crappy unit on a Forge Father. So that you can't pin those as it can get really annoying, even from frag or anything.
If I'm playing Rebs or GCPS, I'll use rapid fire at least once a round, because it is so effective at nullifying teratons or something, like stopping someone teleporting, stopping Kalishi from running or Veerman from running so fast, or a Hulk. Can you hit a Hulk? No, it's solid, isn't it? Stopping someone
anymore. It's
not solid anymore. Absolutely. So a Hulk to stop it sort of shooting you with its amazing cannon. But of course, you can't do any of that with the blooming robot beast things. So, it is huge, isn't it? It really is huge. So what have we got as troop choices then?
Pretty much three variants. So there's Ciphers, which we've discussed are these piloted drones, effectively. Marionettes, which are simpler devices. So you might have a whole squad of them controlled by one Asterian in the ship. And you've got Kalishi, which are actually living, breathing things on the ground.
So Kalishi are a bit like Brockers in some sort of ways. They're like a sub-faction again, a nomadic sort of sub-clan within the Asterian, or not even within, sort of aligned with, they are Asterians, but they don't follow the normal pattern of Asterian lifestyle. They are very much more a sort of more rural, well, not rural is not the right term, sort of a more vagabond sort of sub-race, aren't they? Weird.
I think both factions have in common that they are really rigid or have strict, a strict rule system and like a strict society. And both factions don't really follow those rules. And the Kalishi go more out of emotion, do things because they want to, because they like the thrill of the hunt even.
Whereas elves.
Yeah, whereas the others are more like the normal Asterians are more like of Zen masters, if you want. It's more of an Asian vibe, and they only do things if it's good for the balance, if it's thought of, and the Kalishi just go and do, and like you see when you play against them, kill things.
So Ciphers, what are they like then, Ian? What are they?
They're
do?
incredible at shooting.
That's all they do.
That's the basic thing. Shoot threes.
Shoot three, yeah. Thanks, Claudio. They've got some downsides though, haven't they? They've got two that I reckon, actually. Two downsides.
Well, they're vulnerable. One shot, one kill.
Yeah. But they do have a point of armour, so they're not as easy to kill as you might think.
It's your Forge Fathers, in which case you'll just massacre them. It'll be horrible.
They have another downside as well, is that they have no rifles that only have a range of 5, which doesn't seem a big thing. Yeah, well, it doesn't seem a big thing, except that the board is 8 cubes across. You each start in one of them. Okay, so if you want to shoot someone round 1, you typically move 1 cube, and if a range 6 weapon, like say a GCPS or a Red Trooper or a Forge Father or a Enforcer's got, pretty much anyone's got, you hit the target after just a single move. So every model can move 1, shoot. But with the Ciphers, that loss of 1 cube of range actually is a bit of a bind in that you have to wait really for your opponent to have moved forwards, or you're using a move dice or a shoot dice on a Cipher, which is no bad thing, but you'd like to use that to shoot twice rather than just shoot once. So that's a slight annoyance, I think, if you're running Ciphers. But as you said, in some missions, it's not such a big problem because the deployment isn't quite the same. But it's worth bearing in mind, definitely. They're not that expensive. They're 15 points, but 2 victory points each. So when they go, they're expensive, aren't they?
Yeah.
They do have this toxic smoke screen as well, which is pretty tricky to make work. It has to be said, isn't it? So it looks good on paper, but it can be quite difficult. But if you get it to work properly and it involves synergy, particularly with Kalishi, I think it can work well. But that certainly can look attractive until you try and work out how to do it. And it is really quite tricky to make work. So
I see it as a last-ditch defensive measure for a Cipher.
Yeah, I've used it once.
You're getting charged, so you can have a crack at fighting back, and if you get really lucky, you might actually kill something.
Yeah.
If not, it leaves someone in a vulnerable position for a follow-up.
I've used it once with incredible success, but that's the only time I managed to do it. So I used it on a Cipher who got attacked by a Teraton. Did the smoke screen, didn't do anything. But then a Kalishi came in, friend moved into the cube, and I may have had a fight dice as well. So I'm rolling like 5 or 6 dice on 3s, and I only have to do 1 wound, and then the toxic smoke screen would do the rest. So it is an auto kill if you get a wound because it's toxic 3, but it is very difficult to make it work. What other troops have we got? Sorry, go on.
Well, I think this is the last point to the toxic is you don't always have to use the toxic to make it work because you want to, because it looks really, really nasty against, like in the example against Teraton or something like that. But it's even really effective because you only survive on 5s. You have 1 armor and 1 hit point only. If you're standing on an objective already, you can pop it if you don't want to shoot, and you stand there and can't be shot. And against a few armies, if you're standing against Forge Fathers who have tons of AP, surviving sometimes is way more effective than shooting once.
Yeah, it's a really good point, actually. I mean, I think the natural inclination with Ciphers is to try and shoot all the time because it's shoot on 3s. So, but you're absolutely right. It might on occasion be better to just still be there, you know. if you're scoring 1 or 2 victory points, or even more potentially in some scenarios, per round, and not giving up the 2 from being shot back, of course, and dying, that 1 victory point you're going to score from killing someone pales into insignificance, doesn't it? Right, so who else have we got as a troop?
Well, there's a slight variant on that. You've got the Cipher Warden, who are, I don't know, I'm not quite sure how you use these. Perhaps you can inform us on this, but they shoot on 4s with their charge gloves, which is just a range 1 knockback. And they fight on 4s, which sounds pretty good, except they don't have any AP or frenzy. It's just more knockback.
Yeah, so I think these are I do use these occasionally. They're only 12 points and 1 VP, and I think that's the key for me, really, is that they're cheap. They're the sort of things you want to stick on an objective, and the knockback actually is quite handy. So you can push people off of objectives. We talked about that before. So that ability to move other people around is worth it. And because they're shooting on 4s, they've got a reasonable chance of pushing people away, actually, either in combat or from shooting. So yeah, they're a useful. I would never run more than 1 or 2 of them, you know, because they have a bit of a niche role. But if you want combat guys, there's better options, really.
Yeah.
I think one last
the smoke
thing.
screen idea is a better idea with them, actually. Yeah,
that's what I wanted to say right now, because they, with range 1, the smoke screen is awesome, and with the 4-up fight and shoot, with knockback you would have to have more successes. So it's reasonable that you get that, and then if you don't have to do anything, pop the smoke, you're safe for 1 round.
Park them on an objective, and it's much harder to shift them off, isn't it? Yeah. Next option.
The Marionette. This is if you really want to go cheap.
Love marionettes.
Well, I mean, they're shooting on 5s. They're distinctly average, aren't they? They're
Whoa! Average is where it's at, mate.
Not sure it is. So they're cheap. They're 10 points. You know, shooting on 5, surviving on 5. They've got no armor, these ones, like the Ciphers, but at least they can take 2 hits.
They're still constructs, though, aren't they? So again, sort of that non-being pinned thing. So for 10 points and 1 victory point,
why would you bother pinning a marionette?
So I mean, I really like them, mainly because, well, 2 reasons. I think they're quite good, and secondly, I think the models are amazing. Actually, they're really, really nice models. And you can run quite a lot, which is it's an interesting way to play Asterians. Actually, I've run. I think I've run a 16 or 17 marionette list before now, which is novel. It's interesting.
Is that how you're describing it? Oh, look at my armor list.
Well, it's pretty good. I think
at least I can't be surprised.
I won the game. Yeah.
I can't even.
Yeah. No, they are quite good. They are quite good. But by being cheap, they do unlock other stuff. But they're no slouches. You know, shooting on 5s, it's no bad thing.
I think the biggest problem, whereas Ciphers have range 5 but shoots on 3, the Marionettes still only have range 5. So they are slightly worse than your, say, Marine, who shoots on 5s with range 6. So that's something which really hurts. That first round where you mostly don't get the shots off with your 17, 16 models, if you're going for that, can really hurt, and you have to be aware of that. If you play around it, if you know it, if that is part of your plan, you rush, maybe it's no problem. But that's one, I think, one of the biggest drawbacks with marionettes I found.
And you can't even use them to pin things because they've got no rapid fire. In many ways, these rifles are awful.
There's no rapid fire at all on.
As for rifle, they've got short range and they've got no rapid fire.
Yeah. That is one of the key things that the Asterians don't have. They don't have small arms with rapid fire at all. They have very little pinning at all, actually. I mean, there is some options, but very little. They're too precise for that. Too precise. Final option.
Is it the best game?
Pardon?
Maybe.
That was a sign. We didn't hear you,
Yeah.
Ian. So
You said something about
I
space
think-
elves. Couldn't hear it.
I think we don't need to talk about them. Nobody likes them. I don't like
Delicious.
them. Yeah.
Don't like the models. I'm going to be honest.
Really? I think
I can't agree with that. No,
I think
You
I
love
like the
them.
models, but nothing else.
really good. I saw a photo of someone putting them together the other day. And I was like, wow, they look really good. They look these like mega space bows.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. So these are they've got bows and they've got a glaive. So they can shoot a bit, can't they? I mean, they shoot a bit. Shoot on fives.
They-
It's
Not
just
terrible.
one cube less range than
Yeah.
all the other cubes.
They're nearly as good as the marionettes, and you
Yeah.
often forget that they shoot four cubes with the bows
Why would you ever shoot?
on fives.
Why would you ever
That's-
shoot?
Because sometimes if you get a clear shot, it's really effective. But yeah, the fighting is incredible. Let's talk about fighting.
And because they move 2-3, they're really fast. And actually, yes, you might shoot because you can't quite get into combat yet, but you can get in a much better position. Quick energy
then you-
bow
and
shot,
then
and
you're
then
fast
next
enough.
turn I'm having you. You know, because let's face it, they want to fight. They want to get in the mix. There's a very different sort of feel to pretty much anything else in the Asterian list, isn't it? Because it's a full-on fighter, these guys and girls. So they fight on threes. Do it that way around. I can't do it. There we go. Please. But that's not enough, is it? They don't fight on threes. They've got AP 1 and Frenzy 1. Honestly.
It's
Filthy.
incredible. Yeah.
And how much are they? 15
Yeah,
points.
15.
But they are 2 victory points. So that is actually a bit... There's 2 ways of being pricey in Deadzone, isn't there? Either in actual cost or in victory points and what you give away when they die. And the one thing about Kalishi is that they almost always die because they only survive on
They have to
5s
die.
with no
If you
armor.
don't kill them, you're screwed.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So what? Well, they play aggro, don't they? So they want to score points early, but they're unlikely to make it to round 5. But if they've destroyed you by round 3, then who cares?
I think the point is once they are in combat, they are safe. Because in
Yeah.
combat, they save on 3s because they fight on 3s with 8.
Unless it's ripper suits, like I said the other week. Jeez.
Yeah, well, there are a few options, but usually even the melee-oriented armies can get shredded by them because it's
Yeah.
only because the 3-up fight. Not many options have that, and not troop options.
Yeah.
So if you're in the fight and you can get from a fight to a fight, they can survive pretty long. And if you get in a gun line,
Having said that, because they're a bit pricey, you're never running loads of them. Like everything's pricey in the Asterian list. So I have killed several of them in combat before now because they only get that one chance to fight. And if so if you've got Veermin Stalkers, which we'll come on to later, I can just feed them in, and then eventually the weight of numbers will just take off the Kalishi because yes, they can fight really well, but they're only rolling basically the same dice, getting less and less dice each time I feed another one in because now he's got a friend. Now I'm the attacker. 5 dice on 4s versus your 3 dice on 3s.
Of course, if you had any sense, you'd just pin it first, and then you can let it roll its survive roll instead of its fight roll,
Yeah,
and then it's screwed.
So that is the absolute thing with Kalishi. That the one thing they hate and are fearful of is any frag or any pinning at all. Completely, if it doesn't kill them, it completely nerfs all their cool stuff. So it makes them survive if you go and fight them way worse. And it takes away their speed as well because then they have to stand up. So now they're only moving 2 cubes rather than the 3, which could easily be the difference between getting into a fight this round and not, actually. Often is, in fact. So that if you're running, maybe not heavy, I don't think heavy Kalishi is a big build, but if you're running 3 or 4 Kalishi, I don't think all Kalishi is a good build at all. If you're running 3 or 4, you want to make sure that you are avoiding the frag weapons and you're not bunching up in cubes. When you bunch them in cubes, target number one every time for any suppressing weapon, any frag weapon, any indirect weapon, because even if I don't kill you, I've totally messed you up. And I've killed more Kalishi hitting walls than I have from frag, because that Survivor 5, it's good, but it ain't great.
This episode is all about knockback and frags and stuff, it seems. But I think that's it's even worse in an army where the rest is completely immune to suppression. Kalishi are the number one target, and then again they are the only ones who can get suppressed. So your mortar is more likely to shoot in there, because it's even worse than shooting on for them than shooting on, say, Ciphers or Marionettes. So,
and they're often the target number one in round 1 and 2, because if you've got Kalishi coming out, if they're going to get you in round 2, if not earlier. If you don't deal with them early, they'll have you. So you've got to get rid of them first, then deal with the Ciphers or the Marionettes, whatever's it. Because yes, they're shooting really well, but these ones will just slice you up if they get in.
But I think when we get to specialists, the Asterians have a few options who can screw that plan up, because you don't know if you have to go to kill the Kalishi, because as we mentioned, they are just too good. But then again, the Assyrians, especially Ciphers, shooting on 3s, can get in as a second wave with specialist weapons, even in round 1, and destroy everything else. So they are glass cannons, the whole army mostly, but you have to be prepared that many things will die.
They're that sort of army, aren't they? That is incredibly good at certain things, but other things it just doesn't have an answer for. So it's certainly not a one way of playing, far from it. But like Forge Fathers or say Enforcers we talked about before, if your strategy goes a bit wrong, you can probably get by still, maybe eke out a win. If your strategy goes wrong with Asterians, and this is they are a bit more of a finesse faction. If it goes wrong, it's much harder to claw it back, because you're less flexible in how your army plays. You know, if you've gone heavy Kalishi and then he's fragged you off the table, then you're on a high into nothing. If you've got heavy Asterians and he's thrown down a heavy Cipher, and he's thrown down more smoke than you could ever dream of, then you've nerfed one of your key things, haven't you? So on specialists, so quite a few options specialists. So we've got your Cipher and a Marionette both have specialist options. Few more choices, well, a few different choices with each one, aren't you, as to which weapons you can take? They can't all take the same sort of weapons. So
I think personally the one I hate the most, because I play against it often and it's really, really good, is the light rocket launcher option for the Cipher specialist.
Really good.
Because it negates the big problem that you can't shoot in round 1, or most of the times. It has the range, says it has AP, and
AP
it's still
2,
yeah.
Which doesn't seem a lot, but it's enough when you shoot on 3s. You
It's
don't need
crazy.
a great big cannon with AP 28 if you're getting more hits.
Get ammo or an holo sight and high ground. Each extra die is so much gain, because only on 1 and 2s you miss. It's crazy. You can take out Striders in one shot because you have so many successes.
It's not uncommon to see people running 2 Cipher specialists.
And I think that's if you're going for a Kalishi heavy, those are perfect, because you have the long range support against heavy armored things, maybe with AP2, where the Kalishi with AP1 may struggle, and you have the threat range, so you have to get them off board because they shoot at everything you've got, while the Kalishi close the gap.
I'd say you tend to see that light missile launcher more at the 150 or more than 150 list, 200 point list, because you're mainly taking it to deal with Striders. And so at less than 150 points, you're typically not seeing Striders. You could see them in Plague or GCPS or Maison Labs, but you're almost 9 times, well, not 9 times, maybe 60% of the time you're going to see them in a 200-point list, aren't you? Something big enough to have armor to.
But then again, you have AP2, which helps against the Forge Guard to one-shot them before the light support kicks in.
I wouldn't say it's just for vehicles.
Yeah,
I just say it's more common to see them taking particularly the double light missile.
The double one, yeah. But one is always useful because there's always one unit you need to shoot because it's like a peacekeeper which you have to ignore or a Forge Guard.
Even a Hulk or something like that.
Yeah, and you can shoot those units because you always, like most of the times, your shooting is better than the survive. Yeah. You have maybe more dice because you can throw one and you have height, you have a holo sight, you have ammo, and then
Inferno Drill's got the same survive.
Yeah, Inferno Drill, but you shoot the engineer and not the drill. So,
but I think there's not that much AP actually in the Asterian list for shooting, at least as well. So it does. Yes, the AP2. Yeah, right. Quite often that might not be necessary, but he's still effectively, if you don't need the AP, he's a no rifle with better range. And you've only paid how many points is it for the missile launcher? 8 points and 1 victory point. It's not the most expensive heavy support weapon to have, to be honest. So yeah, really good option. You can. What else can you take as a Cipher specialist? You've got a variety of sort of other weapons, haven't you? You can take a force rifle, which gives you blast. It's cheap. I don't see many people taking that, to be honest. Blast doesn't do any damage, so I think when you're shooting on 3s, I think typically you want to hurt something.
You only need to hit with it. So yeah, it's
you
a
could give
really
that to
tactical. Yeah.
Sorry, say again.
You can give that to your marionettes. They can take that.
Yeah. The other thing that you can have is a fission beamer as well. Now, I don't think I've ever seen anyone take a fission beamer on a Cipher specialist. It's also an option on one of the weapons platforms we'll talk about in a minute. It's incredibly good. It's AP5.
And this is what you take when you've got striders to deal with.
Yeah, but the downside is it's heavy and it's 12 points.
Well, so it should be.
Yeah, so it should be. But I think that's why you don't see it taken. I don't think you see it taken very often because it is expensive. But it's certainly no bad option because unlike the weapons drone, you can walk up onto a building and give yourself that extra height and stuff like that. So, gee, I'm talking myself into it now. Why have I not?
It's still heavy. It's still heavy. So you have that backdraw.
And it is 4 points more than the light missile launcher. So yes, it's got more AP, but you lose some of that versatility, don't you?
Yeah, the mobility, walk one to the point where you get the clear shot, where you get the height, where you get away from another shooty guy wanting to kill you. Most of the times, coupled with AP2 is enough to kill any threat besides vehicles. The light is, it's easier to play with, I would say. So
the Marionette Specialists have a few more interesting options, actually, I would say. The Cipher Specialists, they all pretty much do the same. Well, the Blast one, I don't think many people would take that. But the others basically provide armor piercing. But the Marionettes have got some quite fun choices, which are slightly different from standard Asterian playstyle, aren't they? So they've got an It Burns weapon.
You've got the Phlogister. Okay, so it's a flamethrower. It's got AP.
Yeah, which is no bad thing actually. They're still shooting on 5s. AP on a flamer. That's not that common actually. The downside is that height doesn't make any difference, and you can't.
Downside is they're shooting on 5s with 3 dice. It's just 3 dice.
Yeah. But what It Burns weapons do, which provides something novel for the Asterians, they fill in a little bit of a gap in that they don't really have any pinning stuff. So It Burns weapons, whilst they don't do pinning in a normal way, they can effectively do that when you then activate by making you miss an entire turn, or even doing damage to you. So they provide a similar sort of role, don't they? What else have they got?
A chance of getting something better of a stun.
Yeah. They also have a sniper rifle option. Which is actually quite tasty, even on a shoot 5.
I'm so glad Ciphers can't take sniper rifles, because the first thing you think about, why Marionette's shooting that's not so good. But 2 extra die and AP1 with height, maybe, if you get there, because you want to get there.
It is heavy.
Always good.
Slight downside to it.
I'd rather take a Cypher with a fission beamer.
Yeah.
Because the weapon's the same cost. 12 points, 1 victory point, but the fission beamer's got better range, way more AP, and it's being wielded by someone who shoots on 3s.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about the AP is you don't need AP5. Nothing's got more than armor 4, so you don't need that extra point of AP.
Let's not get into that. It's theoretically possible, as you well know.
Yeah.
The other thing, though, as well, is that, as we said before, rolling more dice gives you more chance of 8s. So I would argue that 5 dice on 5s is slightly better than 3 dice on 3s, because I guarantee you, most often you're getting a maximum of 3 hits, possibly even only 2 hits.
Yeah,
because you're only rolling 3 dice, so you got a 3 and 8 chance of getting an 8. Well, not 3 and 8, but you know what I mean. 1 in 8 chance 3 times, as opposed to a 1 in 8 chance 5 times.
I think it has its place because of the exploding 8 mechanic, and also because of other synergies. You have 2 HP with a Marionette, so if you're facing off against, say, Forge Fathers, 2 HP is better than 1 armor of a Cypher. And there are synergies with the leader, which we will get to later, where you can pretty much work with the sniper. So
I do agree with you, though, Ian. Despite having said that, I don't think I've ever run one, because I think it's hard to see past the attraction of the 3+. I think, genuinely, it's like 3+. I'm always going to be saying that's 3 hits.
Yeah,
and I think, although I think I'm right in that the 8 exploding is an important aspect, you would generally take 3 hits over a chance of more hits.
And if you get some extra die from ammo, from height, from
3s as well.
Yeah.
Well,
exactly.
They're almost always surviving on 4s at
way
best.
more likely to hit. You've got extra dice for height, extra dice from command dice. Each one of them is just way more likely to be another success.
Basically, it's like missile launcher each time, isn't it? That's what I'm going for.
Yeah.
It's just too good.
I think
Holosight on one of them, ammo on the other one.
Yeah. I think the sniper only works if you're going for a Marionette list with a Marionette leader. There it's better in the end.
17 marionettes. Let's do it.
Maybe 10 and 5 snipers. Okay.
And there's one other option, isn't there, which is the grenade launcher. Now, that is actually quite an attractive option, I think, because it gives you something that isn't available in the list, apart from one of the weapons drones, in any other way, which is indirect 3. And on range 5, that's about the same as a Veermin grenade launcher. It's not the best, it's the same as GCPS ones, so it's not as good because it's not hitting the baseline on round 1. But when they come forwards, you're keeping people off objectives and stuff like that, which again, particularly if you're synergizing with Kalishi, being able to pin people, pinning a big gribbly monster like an aberration or something like that. Haven't got any other pinning really. Grenade them with a grenade launcher, then send your Kalishi in. Hang on, suddenly that fight becomes a completely different story, doesn't it? With a Kalishi going
something
in.
I'd be much more happy to delegate to Marionettes.
It's a much more support role from it.
Give them line of sight, so they just need 1 success, and it'll go in the queue you want it to.
Well, even on 2 successes, it's pretty likely they'll get it. 3 dice only need 5, so it's 50-50 on each dice, isn't it?
It's a lot less certain.
Yeah, it's the same with nearly every faction with grenade launchers. If you shoot on 5s, it's always a gamble if you don't see the target. But one thing the Marionettes are really good at, the specialists with the grenade launcher, indirect weapons, have to shoot as a long action. And the same with the sniper. Usually just go there and pin them so that they can't shoot the next round. They are constructs, so you can't pin them. You can't suppress them. So they can always shoot unless you kill them. And that's one of maybe one oversight if you're looking for heavy weapons or indirect weapons, that on marionettes they may be better than on like GCPS Marines or something else.
So we've got a couple more specialists to get through. Black Talons. I like Black Talons.
I love them.
Yeah. So these are like the elite of the elite, aren't they? They're like even better ciphers, really. So they're 20 points, 2 victory points, specialists, of course. Same stat profile, actually. Still vulnerable. They do have glide and a jump pack, so they're a bit more able to move around terrain. But what they really have is energy shield 2. So their survivability is boosted quite substantially by an energy shield, because the way energy shields work is that you roll 2 dice, and for every 6+ you get, you take off a hit, basically. Which I've seen them keep. I've seen even that 2 keep them in the game for an entire game, to be honest, on occasion.
If you're lucky.
If you're lucky, yeah.
I'm
it's
not
a bit nuanced.
It's worth the extra 5 points.
I think it's more. You have more options. You have weapon options with them, and you can have the glide and jump pack can really work, because you want to play on an interesting battleground, many high options. So they can get faster to some points where you want to have them, and then if they are there, they survive better, because nothing can negate the energy shield. It's always there. Yeah. Until it fails, because you roll more ones than successes. Yeah. But then usually you're dead if you're a cipher. So and that coupled with the energy shield options you can buy as items in the Asterian list, or cheap, because they are the cheapest and most variable energy shields you can buy. So you can buy an energy shield for a model which already has an energy shield, and you roll both separately. So you roll the 2 dice for your Black Talon energy shield, and then maybe you buy a cheap another two energy shield. So there you can maximize your chances to survive with a relatively mobile unit, which then still shoots on 3s. So you can get those clear shots gliding around, and even get melee weapons. It's costly.
Yeah, it becomes expensive
too. But I've seen it work, because it's still AP2.
I think you're right. They are a bit pricey, but I quite commonly take one of them, because that extra option of being able to survive a bit more allows me to be a little bit bolder about where they're sitting. So working for that height, for instance, than I might do with, say, a normal cipher. So I do think they have a role. I don't think I'd ever probably take more than 2, mainly because it's so expensive, actually. But the energy shield certainly can, even energy shield 2 can certainly keep you in the game, because you've still got your armor, and most things are not got AP that are shooting you.
And they are still 2 victory points, if I recall.
Yeah,
right.
so they're more expensive than a cipher.
Yeah,
apart from 5
only the points you
well, and then they're a specialist, so there's an unlock option. There's a bit more variety on some of the other specialists. So we've got 2 types of drones, haven't we? So again, keeping that sort of robotic sort of theme, we've got the support drone, which comes on the Marionette sprue, hard plastic sprue. So there's 3 options with the support drone. These are the cheaper drones, aren't they? They're sort of much more infantry support, section support sort of things. So you can basically just give them extra guns. That's not bad. It's not bad enough. I think it comes about 12 points to do with the extra guns.
Yeah, it's cheap.
Yeah, so that's 2 more points than a normal marionette. And what are you getting? You're getting an extra
Weight of fire.
Weight of fire, aren't you? So it's not the best option, but it's okay. It's pretty good. I certainly have run one. Just that extra little bit of it shooting, handy. What other options have we got?
Comms and camouflage.
So what does a camouflage do? Can't remember, can you? I'm going to have to double check now. Camouflage gives everyone in the cube and the cube around it -1 to hit, isn't it?
Yeah.
Cloaking device, isn't it?
So often used,
Yep.
apparently.
No,
Yeah.
it is used. I haven't looked at it for ages. So everyone gets a -1 dice modifier to shoot anyone in the cube or an adjacent cube. So you've got a 9-cube bubble. That's actually pretty massive.
Even more if you think in 3D.
Well, yeah, of course, yeah. 27 cubes, isn't it?
Something like that.
I'm going to show my poor maths now. Yeah, I think that I think the cloaking device one is a pretty good option. It comes in at 17 points then, but when you think that the way Deadzone works is all about extra dice and all about reducing dice, that's pretty massive. And also when we've talked about how fragile a lot of Asterian models are, Kalishi, vulnerable on your ciphers, taking a dice out of what's coming at you is actually can be really frustrating to your opponent. It's only on shooting though, of course. So if you've got some plague gribblies coming in at you, then it doesn't matter.
Yeah. But you part one of these behind your 2 light missile launchers.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. Which you may well have put a shield on one of them as well.
And then
you
again,
put a holosight on the other one, of course. Without saying.
If you have armor 1 and only 1 HP because of vulnerable, every die can kill you.
Yeah.
Because if you get past that 1 wound, you're just gone. And if you only roll like maybe 2 die against a cipher, you have to get 2 successes against 3 survive rolls and the 1 armor, and it gets really hard to do anything with like your rep troopers or GCPS troopers, like all those guys who just shoot and the 3rd one maybe kills because you get the chance. So against many little or not that good shots, it's really effective. But costly. 17 points doing nothing else than shielding.
But if it's keeping your ciphers alive, who are hopefully killing someone every time they shoot. But
they are.
Yeah, I mean, I must say my go-to option, and I take it pretty much every time I play Asterians, is to actually take the comms relay. So this is the other option you could take on a support drone. So this is, again, 8 points. So that's coming, that boosts it from 9 to 17 points and from 1 victory point to 2 victory points. And it doesn't shoot. It doesn't help you survive. It literally does nothing other than gives you Tactician 1 and Communications Relay. So when we mentioned before on the Marauder ones, Tactician 1 on a model that's not your leader, you might think, well, what's the point? But if I'm running a Kalishi leader or a Cypher Prime or a Black Talon Prime, someone who is probably going to be trying to shoot or fight, I can be much bolder with them now, knowing that if they die, I've got my little drone tucked out the back somewhere who is going to replace my command dice if I lose my leader. Now that sounds like a reserve option. So you might think, oh, that's a bit of a waste of points. But actually, it does more than that, doesn't it? Because the Communications Relay is immense.
Well, it's all right.
Oh, it's immense. It gives you an extra activation, a separate command dice, effectively, as an extra activation every round. The reason that's immense to my mind is that your army as Asterians, we talked about being a bit of a glass cannon. You've got to make every single model count. Every Kalishi's got to kill someone. Every Cypher's got to kill someone, at least in the first 2 rounds. So if you can act before your opponent acts, that allows you to delete models that he now can't fight back with. And so I think that's why I think the Communications Relay is so immense, is that if I can get those 2 light missile launchers off before you've had a chance to do anything, then I'm already quids in, really. Even if I then lose one in a round, I pretty much take this every single time because, yeah, it just sits there, but it allows you, I call it activation advantage. So you are also finishing earlier as well. You know, more likely to finish the round earlier, meaning you're going first next time. So every one of my guys is getting more for their points, as it were. I love it. So obviously you can tell that.
And even if you don't shoot, so if you're playing even more heavily with Kalishi, you can always get in a better position because you have a better cover somewhere, and you have to go there where you break line of sight. It can really help you out. It's yeah, as you said, it can be amazing, but you have to play with it. You have to think about. You have to have a plan to use it. Else, it's just standing there wasting points. And I think with 200 points, it's even better. With 150 or less, it gets too expensive.
Yeah, maybe.
No.
Yeah, I mean, I think I typically run with a Black Talon Prime. So because I want him to be shooting and potentially fighting, having the support and the confidence to throw him out there is great, you know, or maybe even a Cipher Prime sometimes I use. But if I was running an Overseer, then maybe I wouldn't bother because he's already got the command too, and I'm not going to get him in the mix. So maybe I don't need that support drone.
Yeah, and I think Tactician is really important with Asterians because you have so many options to shoot or fight on 3-up, where every extra die you roll or every extra fight or shoot can be so effective, more effective than many or most of the other factions or any faction in that sense. So it's really important to not lose your Tactician, and that backup can really help there.
Weapons drones. So these are the big ones, aren't they? These have been around since first edition, these weapons drones. And again, they're a little bit more pricey. They're 12 points, 1 VP. They don't survive very well, any of these drones. They survive on 6s, which is a bit of a problem. But they are size 2, and they're constructs again. But it's all about what you put on top of them, isn't it? So you've got options here of shield generator, gives you shield 4. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. But it is expensive. It's going to come in 24 points then for a shield generator. And that gives shield 4 to everybody in the cube, isn't it?
The cube. Yeah, but
only in the cube though.
And that's only two models,
models
because it's size 2, and you have to keep them there, and you run the risk that some like mortars just go off in that cube. It can hurt. I think it's really hard to play with that.
And then you've got the fission beamer option we mentioned before, so it's the same one, high AP. Again, 24 points now for that. And then I think you've probably got the two favourites now, haven't you? So we've got a plasma vortex, which is 18 points. So it's 30 points for this drone, and it's
6 up survives.
3 victory points. So why on earth would you? And it's got range 4, even shorter than no rifles. Only AP 1. So why would you take it ever?
Because it's range for instant death.
It's frag. Don't need to be German or English for this. Frag. 5.
That thing that was there, not there anymore. Gone.
Hang on.
Just gone.
There's nothing in the game that's frag 5. I think frag 3 is the best anything else gets, isn't it?
You don't have to hit.
It's horrendous.
Yeah, and you don't have to hit.
Don't even have to roll a hit. It shoots on 5. Don't even bother at 5s.
Well,
auto hit. If it's shoot, you know, if you come against one of them and your player you're against has got a shoot dice, it's just like, why am I bothering? You know, it is criminal. Frag 5. So frag, it pins, it bounces people, all the usual stuff. But as you said, frag 5, you don't need to roll a hit. It wounds on 4 pluses. It's not even 50%.
Yeah. So you're not using the shoot of 5 from the weapon.
Not at all.
You're rolling on 4s because that's what frag does.
Yeah. So you're
everything.
5 dice on 4s. Like we said, each one a chance of an 8. Okay. At worst, you've got a better than 50-50 chance of hitting You know, it's nasty as. If you see one of them on the other side of the table when you're playing Asterians, you must have an answer for it. Because if you let it get to 2-3 rounds of shooting, you're gone.
And then again, we have the same theme with Kalishi, the light rocket launchers. You have so many threats you have to deal with.
Yeah.
It's really about what's the terrain, how can you go, what is your number one target. I think that's the biggest problem, to really know what are you wanting to shoot if you play against them, and if you play them, what are you like sacrificing, maybe giving a juicy target because you have a plan. It's hard to play, and I think the drone is even harder because it's 30 points, so many victory points, range 4. I think you have to play a few games to really get that right, to get a feel.
That's why I come back
to
to that comms relay, that activation, making sure you use the things that are so good and so expensive in your list. So Plasma Vortex, really, really good, but a little bit harder to use and incredibly expensive. And again, following that theme of Asterians, as fragile as, because the survive 6, no armor. Yeah, it's size 2, so it's got 3 wounds. But survive 6, I mean, anyone's shooting that, aren't they?
And beasts,
kill it,
right? They are beasts, so
they are
they
beasts,
can't
so they
take
can't
items.
interact with items.
No,
and stuff, yeah.
or get an energy shield for cheap. They can't get that, so that would be the perfect option, but you can't do that. So
I mean, that's a pretty good option for a weapon drone. There's another excellent option as well, which is to give it a pulse bombard. So again, this is 12 points. It's only a mere 24 points for this support weapon, but it's still 3 victory points. Range 8, indirect 4. So it's a mortar, like other units have got. Really good again. And obviously, because it's indirect, the one thing that is bad for me as a weapon drone is my survive 6. So what do I do if I've got a mortar? I'm indirect, aren't I? So I just stick it behind a building. And yes, I am still shooting on 5s, so it's not the hardest if I've got, it's not the easiest, sorry, if I've got no line of sight.
but it's still a 50-50 chance that
Still a 50-50 chance.
you can take that.
Still indirect 4.
And then you damage as always on 4 ups with indirect, so I think you can take the risk to hide because it's well worth it.
And again, it does something that the Asterians don't have a lot of, which is that pinning. You know, so you hit the other heavy weapon, you hit the other mortar or something like that, or the fragile troops that are all bunched up.
Or the bunched up, because that's, as you said, that's one thing where Kalishi can go down if the opponent has them bunched up. You run in there, they have extra die. And if you just soften that up, or you don't even have to shoot into bunched up troops, it's also enough for the opponent, psychological warfare. You don't want to stack your troops because you know you can be shot. So that enough is a threat that works against your opponent.
When you see your opponent's got a mortar or something like that of any description that can hit your baseline, it changes your deployment definitely. You know, you say, okay, I want as few models in each cube as possible. And in some scenarios, that's easier than others. And with some armies, it's easier than others. So what else have we got? We've got Sky Razor. So we won't talk about Sky Razor much. That's a fast version of like a Cipher, really, on a speeder bike. Pretty tasty. I quite like them. Shoot quite nicely. They don't shoot quite as well. They shoot on 4s, but they've got weight of fire. And they can zip around quite nicely, so they're pretty good.
They only shoot on 4s. What a problem.
Average.
Crazy.
Leader-wise, what have we got?
The Overseer. One of the few guys who is a true Asterian and boots on the ground at the same time. He is your tactician 2 mastermind, so to say.
Yeah, so he's your go-to if you want the command dice, isn't he? You know, he certainly isn't great at anything else. He shoots all right, fights all right, but all his weapons are a bit naff. He's got energy shield 3 though, so he's not as fragile as some things, and he's not vulnerable, of course. But you still would want to keep him quite protected, I think, because you'd be worried about losing the command dice. And then you've got basically a leader option for all the different troop types, haven't you? So we've got Kalishi Dervish, Cipher Prime, Marionette Prime, Black Talon Prime, And they all sort of work on the strengths of the troop type they come from, don't they? So, which is your favourite?
Probably the Black Talon.
Yes, get in, Ian.
No. I think the only faction I'm not really playing besides GCPS are Assyrians, but I'm playing against them many times, and I hate the Black Talon as a leader. So I too would go for the Black Talon now.
I think in terms of offensive output, much like you, Andy, he is prolific.
Thanks, I think. He shoots well. He's got a nice blade. He can fight quite well on 4s.
Well, that's it. He shoots on 3s.
Yeah.
Drop a couple of extra points on him to give him a rifle, range 5. So he's probably range out from decent range. And yeah, he's got that AP2 weapon and fights on 4s, which is brilliant.
But he's vulnerable, so of course he's going to die, isn't he?
Well, maybe not.
Energy shield. Hang on. Let's get it right. I can't do. I can do that. Fingers don't work.
No, you do it that way in Germany.
But that's mental.
It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Well, whatever. Yeah, energy shield 4 coupled again, as we already talked about, with another energy shield, and Assyrians can buy as an item an energy shield 4.
4 and 3.
4. You can have 4 and 4.
We could have 4 and 4, yeah.
So you roll
5.
2. You roll survives. You have 1 armor, and then you roll 4 dice on 6 ups, saving everything on 6 ups. Then again 4 dice on 6 ups.
It's even better though, isn't it? Because his splat does something like that as well.
He's got a good splat. It works well with the rest of the a strong shooty force. So any Cipher or Black Talon who's getting shot at can add an extra dice to their survive roll, which is probably what they need.
So that Cipher with the light missile launcher is now sticking around a little bit better.
That's what we were talking about with the drone. Everything which comes through those little shots really hurt. It's a really, really good option, and he looks really cool too.
He's a great model.
Love the Black Talons.
Great. So I think that's enough for the Asterians, isn't it? We've talked far too long on the Space Elves.
Yeah, we didn't talk only 10 minutes on every faction. I think.
Got carried away. Got carried away.
Yeah. Because they have so much flavor, both of them. Forgefathers and Asterians are really well represented in rules-wise and fluff-wise. It really works.
Thank you very much for joining us today, and thank you very much for watching. Please check out the rest of our Wait for 5 videos and listen to the Wait for 5 podcast. Thank you very much, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.